welcome everybody to our beginner RMS training today. It's going to be a two-session training. We got today and tomorrow is actually the advanced. So today is the beginner and tomorrow is the advanced. So you might be able to pick up some extra tricks if you attend tomorrow as well. But anyway, welcome to the RMS beginner training. We do have a YouTube channel, as you can see on our first slide there at the bottom. That YouTube channel, you can search it just by RMS Support Center or clicking that link there, or on our RMS website. We can find that information as well. But in there, you'll find a lot of supporting videos and trainings that'll help you in your day-to-day. If you don't find some of the information on here that you're looking for, it very well may be there. As you can see in the chat, also we've linked that RMS YouTube channel there. That being said, this training is open for questions, but there's going to be different sections that will have those questions that you can then jump in and make sure to speak up. Also, we do have a Q&A section that you can ask those questions and we can answer them as well. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to the trainer. And yeah.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Matt, and I will be your guide. Now, within this topic, we will be covering some of the basic or how-tos for the RMS application as it may pertain to your daily operations. Additionally, as a reminder, this session, as with all of our digital sessions, is recorded, and after about 5 business days or so, give or take, it will be posted to our YouTube channel for your viewing pleasure and continued reference. Now, I would like to point out with this presentation, we will not be discussing any of the office or district policies that may be associated with the various tasks, functions, or operations within the RMS application. With that being said, it is always vital to check in with your office or district policies when it comes to how actions are to be handled regarding your best business practices. So, as you can see on the slide presented here, we will be reviewing a couple of essential areas contained within the RMS application, such as general navigation and administration. But before we move on into the good stuff like submittals, we will take a quick 5-minute break so that you can take care of any business. Additionally, you will notice that there will be a pause at the end of each section. This is for anyone out there in the audience to voice any questions that they may have about the last block of material covered. If you have any questions that are not covered in this training, there is a section at the end where we will open up the floor to any and all questions you may have. So please ensure that you keep your questions focused on the section we just covered at those given times. In fact, we highly encourage questions because, in my humble opinion, the only stupid question is the one not asked. Well, that and your questions will help us grow this presentation for future attendees. Additionally, you may notice that there is a live Q&A chat going on throughout the presentation. Our SMEs stand ready to be stumped by whatever RMS-related questions you might have to throw at them from any of the given sections at any time, so please have at it. Now, with all of that boilerplate information dispersed en masse, let's get started with the basic navigation of RMS. As you can see, these listed items are our learning objectives, otherwise known as LOs, for this section. Now, you may notice that many of the slides will have additional information that I may not directly address. It doesn't mean that this information listed is not important. It is just that this information is more of an additional reference about those LOs or subjects that we're reviewing. And in such, we do provide these slides on our homepage at rms.usace.army.mil so that you can download and review at your leisure. Now, once you land on our homepage, all of this information should be there towards the top of the page in the section labeled RMS Support Center Hosted Training Dates, where you can see the links to all of our various training sessions. All right, and away we go. So, The first item we will discuss is the initial object that you should see after you have installed and ran the RMS application by double-clicking on the core logo, and that would be the RMS Launcher screen. Now, this little program is quite important because it is the gateway which ensures your system is, one, up to date with the most recent launcher version, and two, has the most recent patch release. You see, RMS is constantly being updated to meet the demands of an ever-changing world, such as adding new features, correcting any bugs, improving on existing efficiencies, or even streaming any current processes to make the application overall more user-friendly. But because of all this, it is important that the first thing you see once you double-click on that little RMS icon is this window right here, even if it only pops up for just a brief moment. Additionally, on this slide down here, you can see what we have some helpful little links to our YouTube tutorials on how to install the RMS application, especially if you are installing it on your government computer. Yet, like with any evolving technology, there are bound to be some common errors that users encounter. The first one pointed out here is not necessarily an RMS related issue, but more of a Windows operating system issue. Yet again, your RMS support center has got your back and wants to ensure that you can keep moving forward. As it stands, Windows sometimes will minimize the screen once open, just simply because there are maybe multiple monitors and various other windows open already. But this YouTube tutorial will help you identify this issue and a real quick fix for it. Another common issue you might encounter is that your application prompting you that it is disconnected from the following resources. Typically, this is just a shortcut pointing to the wrong executable file, which is covered in this YouTube tutorial, where we demonstrate how you can solve this fault. Yet, as any maintainer will tell you, the best maintenance is actual use. Therefore, it is important to open up the RMS application and completely close out of it at least once a week. With all that being said, the RMS Support Center stands ready to assist you, so please don't be shy about giving us a call. We always look forward to talking with you. All right, so now that we have gotten the login screen to open up, let's take a brief tour of what we have here. In the top right, you will see some useful buttons. Now, this is the RMS Support button. Will take you straight to our ticketing system, Jira, where you can put in a ticket, check for updates, or even get our phone number to give us a call. However, if you don't yet have a Jira account, you can create it and then proceed with creating a help desk ticket with the RMS Support Center. But please be advised that the Jira ticketing system does not use the same credentials as the RMS application. Also, if you have Internet Explorer as your default web browser, you will not be able to access our Jira ticketing system. The reason for this is simply because the rest of the civilized world has moved on to browsers such as Edge, Chrome, Firefox, or really anything else besides Internet Explorer. As for this other button, it will take you to our RMS homepage of rms.usace.army.mil, regardless of the patch level you are working with, so that you can find out all sorts of useful information, i.e., what should the current patch level be, or review of any release notes for this or any previous patches. But I digress. Now, front and center on this screen is where we will be logging into the application. So if your name doesn't populate here in this box, after a few seconds have elapsed, just click on the Refresh Smart Card button right here to refresh your CAC reader, and then your name should populate for you to click on the login. Now, after clicking the login button, you will be prompted to choose from a certificate in order to continue the login and authentication process. So when you are prompted to choose, just expand those certificate selections by choosing more options, and then select the certificate annotated for authentication. It'll be the one that has your name followed by some numbers. And then go ahead and enter your CAC PIN when prompted. Now, moving on from in the troubleshooting for a login, if you can't seem to get in to RMS for one reason or another, you can always select this Server Connections button down here. That will bring up another view, and then you'll be able to start a test to see if your application is on talking terms with the necessary servers to function correctly. But just like most digital conversations, we really don't need to understand what is going on behind the scene. Although we do want to verify there are green check marks at each part along the tree you will see. Anything other than that, you will need to report that to the RMS Support Center in either a JIRA ticket or just a quick phone call. Also, right here below everything, you can determine what is your current patch level. And then below all that, you can verify that on your RMS homepage if you are on the current patch level. Currently, our patch level today is 356. And as this slide shows us, this individual is on patch level 328. So with that bit of information, we can surmise that the person would not be able to log into RMS until they updated their RMS application with the most recent patch. And finally, we have some important notices located down here at the bottom of the screen when the CIO or G6, as everybody knows them, has scheduled maintenance for specific weekends. What this means for you is that you may or may not be able to access RMS during these times annotated here. Now, please remember that these work times are based off the U.S. Central Time Zone. Nevertheless, once you crest the top of that hill we know of as logging into RMS, you will see this first view, affectionately known as the map view. Now, these buttons up in the top right of the screen function just the same as they did on the login screen, but you might notice that there's an addition to the group, the logout button. Now, this is always a good practice to log out of RMS application before you click on the close the application window by clicking on that little X in the top right corner of the window. It just saves you time and prevents headaches for you and me down the line. Moving on down here in the bottom left of the screen, once again, we are shown what is your current patch level for this session. Now, it is from this screen that we can determine log into the district or which our desired contract is associated. A quick point of note is that all USACE district offices are color-coded according to the USACE divisions. Therefore, you can select the USACE divisions here along the right side, as we see in this zoomed excerpt, and it will list all the USACE district offices below. Or you can just go ahead and select the appropriate point on the map. Additionally, the 4 most recent selections will be stored up here in the top right corner for your quick access. Although, as you see presented in this slide, an issue that I just want to highlight, for it is all too prevalent, is specifically the log into whatever district failed. So log into Tulsa district failed, or log into Chicago district failed, or log into whatever district you're trying to log into failed. Now, this can happen on a regular basis for users who are 1, assigned to multiple districts, or 2, have recently transferred to a new district, or even 3, might just be a brand new user to RMS for a single district. To resolve this, you will first need to contact your district administrator within that district that you're trying to access. The RMS Support Center unfortunately does not have the authority to grant access or modify your RMS staff record for these matters. However, if you have been granted access to that district and are still receiving this error, please, by all means, give us a call so that we can investigate the root of the issue further. Now, moving on into the basics of RMS. This slide shows us some of the features that are present when you are logged into a contract, but more importantly, the basic information to identify where you are within the various layers of the RMS application and how to navigate efficiently through the ins and outs of these layers. Over here in the top left of the screen, you will have the information of what the contract you are in, or the contract title, the contract ID, which is very important, as well as the contract number. Additionally, if you have a delivery order number assigned to your contract, then it will show up at the end of the contract number. Now, whenever you call the RMS Support Center, we will most likely ask you for a contract ID right here within the brackets. This contract ID provides us with information about the district and what contract you are referencing, kind of like a fingerprint. But if you are in the contract selection screen, the screen that's above this one, for any given district, up here in the top left, will be replaced with information about the district you're currently in. Now, each screen past the menu will have a back button, the refresh button, the logout button, and the help button. It is only when you have a contract open that you will see these three buttons here, or a variation of them, depending on whether or where you are within the contract actually. If you have the contract menu button and you click on it, it'll take you back to the main menu of the contract you are in. If you have the contract selection button and you click on it, it'll take you back to the district level for you to select another contract within that same district. If you click on the Government Mode Home button, it will take you back to the map view to select an entirely new district if you want. It is most important to know that RMS does not have a save button. I repeat, RMS does not have a save button. It has a back button. When you click on this button, it will then save your changes and commit them to the database. If you exit RMS without clicking on the back button, after entering any type of data, your data will not be saved. Additionally, it is a good thing to know that there is no undo button. Therefore, it pays to pay attention. Next, we have the refresh button. Now, this is a very special button, being that it notifies us that someone, somewhere, has made some sort of change to the contract that we are currently logged into. Now, this is because multiple users can work in the same contract at the same time. This doesn't necessarily mean that these changes are to the current view that you are viewing, but when this button starts spinning in its counterclockwise direction, just go ahead and click on it to ensure that you have the most recent data displayed within your screen, just so you don't go overwriting someone else's changes. Nevertheless, please understand that the refresh button is not the save button. That's the primary function of the back button. So, continuing on, we have the help button. This is practically the same as the RMS support button on the login screen and the district screen. It gives you the option to create a ticket, check for updates, get our phone number, and even determine what is your current patch level. And now that we have a fundamental grasp on the navigation buttons and what they do, we're going to take a look at the first screen we will be presented with after selecting from the big old map. Now, within the contract selection view that we see here is a bunch of tabs for various functions that are to be worked in at a district level. As to what's behind the curtain within these tabs, that will be reviewed and discussed within our advanced training sessions. For the rest of us, when looking at a contract from our handy-dandy data grid, there are two views you should be aware of: the display contracts and the display projects. Display contracts is typically the default view, as we see over here. However, if you have previously changed and selected the display projects, then every time you view the contracts within this district, they will be sorted by project ID instead of by contract number. It should be noted that the display projects view, the column for the contract ID is just not there. It's not displayed. Instead, you have the project ID. Additionally, in the display projects view, you're only able to select the edit. So you can edit the items within the grid. Within in the display contracts view, you have the add, edit, and archive. Again, that's depending on your level of permissions. So, if you're unable to find a contract that you're looking for or the function that you want, such as add, then you might want to give the radio buttons a glance just to see if you're in the correct view for the appropriate data grid. Continuing on, this slide references the district menu items in the tabs along the top. But what I would like to also draw your attention to is the district contract stages sort tile over here on the left. At the top of each data grid, you receive a notice of what is the sorting filter that is currently applied. Therefore, if you are in the correct view but still not able to see the contract you're looking for, you might have a sorting filter applied. Yet this filter here is here for a reason, because it's very useful when you're getting into an overview of the stages of the various contracts within the district, as well as the ability to quickly review what the contracts are and what they are in their different stages. Now, right up here at the top of those sort tiles, you'll see an ellipses button. Now, this ellipses button will allow you to filter the contracts within the district even further by limiting the information within these various sort tiles to a specific office. This can be quite handy if you only have access to one office, because then you can just choose that office up here and not be bothered with all the muss and fuss of all those other contracts within your districts. Again, in the top left, we see the action items for any within the data grid that are entirely dependent upon your granted permissions: the add, edit, and archive. Again, those are amended by your district admin, and not the RMS support center, so you'll need to talk to them about that. And on the right here, we have the export button, where you can generate a report from the listed contracts of the data grid presently viewed in Excel or a PDF format. And the most important and often underappreciated feature of all is the search box. Now, you can enter any part of the information that may be in any of the columns below, and this will start narrowing down the fields with the more input that it is fed. Now, in the middle section here is where we put our favorite section, and it is a godsend for when you are working on several active contracts. You see, once you have opened a contract, to mark it as a favorite, you'll just need to click on the little star with the words "Mark as Favorite" next to it, which are located in the top right of the screen when you have the contract menu open of said contract. To remove the contract from your favorites, you can either click on the little X that shows up right there, or you can just go back into the contract selection view or the contract menu of a contract and click on the mark as favorites to remove it. Now, unlike Google, this favorite section will only hold a limited number of favorites. So you'll finally be forced to choose who your favorite child is. For me, that's easy. He's my youngest. Additionally, over here is the recent section, which will show you the 4 most recent contracts you have accessed for your quick use. But the never fail option for you to find a contract in the data grid and just double click on it to open it up is the search function right here. Now, you probably have heard me use the term data grid a lot. This is just a nerdy way of saying a list of available information for you to select from. As we can see displayed in this slide, RMS offers a variety of ways to view the data that is in these data grids, such as this view of the Contract Reports module. It is currently set up with a grouping, and we know that by looking up here in the gray area to see that the data is grouped by report menu, which just happens to be some of the various modules you will use when you open a contract. With any data grid, you can sort the data by clicking on the column header once for ascending, or clicking on it once again for descending. Now, this grouping effect goes for any data grid you come upon throughout the RMS application. All you need to do is select the column header and left click on it with your mouse and hold, then drag it up here to the gray area and then release. Now, please note that any changes you do to this data grid, whether sorting, filtering, or grouping, is only temporary and will remain there for only the time you are viewing it. But once you navigate away from that view, it will return to its default view. And as previously noted, any data grid can be filtered. This is done by selecting the little funnel in the icon in the right side of the column header. From here, you will have a submenu to choose your options from the data that happens to be in that column. Or you can even filter by statements or clauses. To close this filter box, you can either select the close option in the top right of the filter box, or simply click anywhere off of that box and it will close away. Now, a quick demonstration can be found in our YouTube channel demonstrating the live detailed function of a filter simply by clicking on this link right here. If you want to clear any of the filtering that you have applied to a column, just select the icon, the filter icon, once again, and then click on the Clear Filter button. Simple enough. Nevertheless, the best tool you can have at your disposal for any data grid, as advertised, is the search box. Just begin to enter any numbers into our text that are pertinent to the information within a given column of the header, and it will be reduced to the results of the data grid below. So that could be anything. It could be these, it could be this, that, whatever. You choose something that you're looking for, you start typing it in there, and it will start reducing. And as we previously mentioned, we have the export button. Now, this slide here, we see what is presented when you click on the export button in the top right of any data grid. After clicking on the export, you'll be prompted with the selection of Excel or report, which basically means export to a Microsoft Excel file or to a PDF report, respectively. Now, both of these products can be viewed, can be saved, and they can be printed. But please note that this export button is not going to export all of the information from behind the scenes for each item listed in the data grid, such as you will not get a listing of all the invoices or of all the QA reports or of all the transmittals and so on by clicking on this button when you're looking at the respective data grids. The export will only display the current view of whatever the data grid is currently showing. Now, if you're in search of such specific information, never fear, you will just need to generate a report. That can be done in our contract report module from inside the contract or through a custom report created at the district level screen. Alrighty then. Here we see the contract menu. Now this is the very first view presented to us when we open a contract. And right up front and center is the action items dashboard. You see these boxes displayed here, 3 key performance indicators, or KPI for short, with 1 for the government, 1 for the contract itself, and 1 for the individual user that has the contract open. That is, if the action items have been previously assigned to them within the contract setup, which we'll go over here in a bit. Now, within each box, there are priority levels of the action items and a number of those action items that are sorted by their priority levels. You should note that there are 4 relative colors to help us notice that our sense of urgency needs to be in any given contract when looking at KPIs. Now, green indicates that all is well in the world and there is no action items that are past due. Yellow indicates that there are low action items that are outstanding. Orange indicates that there are at least medium and possibly low action items that are outstanding. And of course, red indicates that the world is on fire, there are high action items, and very possibly medium and low action items that are outstanding or overdue. But you may be asking yourself, why do we want the contractor to know what is behind why we are behind in our action items? Well, we don't. And that is why there are 2 different views depending on how you are logged into RMS. Here's what the contractor will see when they log into a contract. And here's what the government representative will see when they open a contract. Nevertheless, to enable this handy little feature, the reporting of action items that is, you will need to select the Administrative tab and then select the Action Item Control module once you are in a contract. Now, after you have entered the Action Item Control module, you'll be presented with this view. Up here, we have the sorting tiles of the various action items, and you can also choose whether to view all available action items or just the enabled action items for this contract. One quick note about the sort tiles is that when they are clicked on, they will populate the data down here in the grid with the information that pertains only to that sorting tile. Therefore, just pay attention to the title up here at the top of your data grids. And this goes for pretty much every data grid within RMS that has sort tiles. But back to the discussion. When you click on an individual item from the data grid, you'll be able to enable or disable, enter a description, but most importantly, able to assign a responsible adult for that selected item. Moving on away from action items, we are now going into review a highly utilized feature throughout the RMS application, known simply as document packages. Now, this is your filing cabinet for whatever module you're working in. You can also think of it sort of a bike courier that is hand delivering all those signed documents and any audit evidence that needs to be transferred to and from a contractor and the government. You see, all of the RMS generated documents are automatically added to the document packages folder. And this is where they can subsequently be digitally signed. Now, when a government rep opens a contractor's document package to be reviewed, they will have the option to accept the items for processing or return them for corrections. If the document package is returned, the contractor can then make changes or create a new document package to submit said changes. Yet this really relies on your office and district policies on how to handle the daily operations and interactions between the government and contractor. RMS just facilitates these transactions. What we see here is a zoomed in excerpt of the document packages section. Anytime you see this section within any module, it means that you can attach documents for that module, reports, correspondence, anything, etc. Presently in this image, we will notice that there's nothing in this document package. So, for instance, if you wanted to upload some pictures you took from a QA inspection, you would need to click on the Add button to begin. It is possible to have multiple document packages. I just ask that you check with your office and district policies for more information about this. If there is a document package listed within here, in this section, you can edit it by selecting it and either click on the Edit button or just simply do like I do and double click on it. This is also how you would open it to view what items are within. And delete does what it says and says what it do. But deletion is forever. So please be mindful and refer to your office and district policy when it comes to accepting or returning a document package for corrections. Remember, there is no undo button. Now, once you have opened up a document package, this is the view you'll be presented with. Once again, we have the sort tiles up top. This is for the data grid below. The government users will have the ability to select this generate letter section here, this generate letter button, and it should be noted that these automated letters are created and stored within your district libraries located at the district menu, i.e. advanced training. Come on around tomorrow. Then there is the sign selected documents right underneath that. Now that button should be self-explanatory. You just select the document that you want, click on the button, and you'll be guided through a step-by-step process in order to apply a digital signature to the selected document. There is also the export selected documents, which will pull whatever selected documents for you, but is not to be confused with the export button. Again, the export button only exports the information from the data grid, whereas the export selected documents button will export any of the actual items from that data grid. Additionally, there is the save document to file, which allows you to do the same thing, but individually for any item you have selected within the data grid. Excuse that there. And you'll see that we have in our data grid the functions to edit, or delete in the top left. Now, if this document package is arriving from the contractor, I must reiterate that you please follow your office and district policies on whether it is permissible to delete an item from the document package or not. Down here, we have the document title, very important. The document title is automatically generated whenever a document is created in RMS. It's editable here, although it is highly suggested that you use the default titles that are provided by the RMS application. This is just because the application will then know where to save and subsequently where to search for the document later on. Now, if you must edit the title, please edit it after the hyphen. Right there where it has the hyphen before the 4025, edit anything after that hyphen, the 4025, that's where you can edit it. The description box is all yours to do with as you will. Of course, according to district and office policy. Now, you can see the manual signing options right below the description box here, which may need to be used depending upon the office and district policies and how the 4025 was uploaded from the contractor. And last but not least, the government review notes and the buttons to accept the document package or return for corrections, which will be discussed more later on down the line. Now, a pretty neat feature within the document package is that you can also add items if you have a File Explorer, not Internet Explorer, File Explorer open by dragging and dropping to this area right here. Now, the data grid down here will simply populate with everything you want to do when you drag and drop it into there. Or you can go and click on Add and select the multiple files or select individual files. However, if the file is on a cloud drive and you can't seem to get access to it to add, you're getting an error whenever you're trying to add it into the document package, just give the RMS Support Center a shout so that we can guide you through the process of accessing that file through your user profile in order to validate those credentials with the cloud service, all with the purpose to access the source file that you initially tried to upload. Don't worry, we're smart, we got this. But no matter what work you do in a document package, you must click the back button in order to save or commit anything in the document package, such as the items or the comments, to the database. When it comes to editing a document, as the edit function pertains to RMS, its job is to provide you the opportunity to edit the description and or the document title when inside the document package. Right up here, that little edit button. Zoom on in. Boop. Yet once again, if it is required, please only edit the post text instead of the pre-text. And finally, anything that is provided by the contractor should really only be edited by the contractor in order to maintain that certain level of professionalism. Basically, if it's an item supplied by the contractor and it's required to be edited, then heck, they should be afforded the opportunity to do their job right, given adequate instructions. Once again, don't forget back. It's your save and commit button. You got to do it to complete your work. But our final function of that common trio up here in the top of any data grid that we want to talk about is the function that is to be feared, or actually, the function, it shouldn't be feared. It should be cautiously observed. And this is the delete function. Now, if you're ever trying to delete an item from a document package, after you select it and you click on the delete button, RMS will prompt you with all the pertinent information here about that item so you can ensure that you are sure about those actions. Basically, RMS is just giving you that one last chance prior to deleting that document forever. Additionally, whenever a document package has been returned to the contractor for corrections, you must keep in mind that the contractor will then be able to add it, edit, or even delete items within the document package to include the document package itself. Some other areas you want to check in the document package prior to deletion are the status right here of the documents, the signatures. That's pretty important. When it comes to signatures, there are 3 signature statuses a document can have. It can either be 1, not signed, or 2, electronically signed, or 3, attested, signature attached. That basically means that the document was manually signed, or in other words, the contractor had to download it for some reason, sign it in ink, scan the document, then upload it back into RMS. So just be aware that there are different signature statuses, or they may affect the way that these individual items within the document package are processed. And again, that's dependent upon your office and district policy. You'll hear me preach that a lot. But finally, when you are in a document package and you need to sign an item with a digital signature, just select the item and then follow the simplistic prompts that presented as we alluded to previously. This is the same situation for any digital signature on a document package, apart from signing a 4025, which will be required to complete your transmittal. So 4025, totally different thing, has to be done to complete a transmittal though. But we're going to review that more in depth when we get into submittals and transmittals. Although it should be noted that only PDF and Word documents can be signed. Only those will take a digital signature inside RMS. However, another thing to note is that whenever you're signing a Word document, don't be alarmed when you see this Word document count just all of a sudden reduced down, because whenever a Word document is signed, it is converted into a PDF and stored with the digital signature attached. Also, another point of interest is that when you are digitally signing the document, within the prompts you're going to see, you'll arrive at a position for you to select on an ellipses button, and it's a drop-down selection box. But if you don't see the signature position that you want for the document that you're signing, then, or not, even if you don't want it, or the position that you need for that associated document, you may have to download the document and manually sign it. But again, those are questions best referenced and queried and thought out with your office and district policies. Those are where you can get your guidance on what to do if you don't see that signature block section. All right, with all that being said, let's go ahead and open it up for questions. If you haven't posted to the Q&A channel or would like to voice your questions about what has been covered in these last 30-odd slides, please do so now. If you don't hear any responses here in the next 30-odd seconds, then I will believe that silence is compliance. Going once. Going twice. Outstanding. Either you guys are entirely too smart, or I think I might be doing my job right. So we're going to move on. Here we are getting into some oppressive stuff here. This is the Administration tab. So now in the Administration tab, we will see here a list of all of the LOs that we will be reviewing throughout this section. Please ensure that you have downloaded this presentation from our website so that you can review these subjects at your leisure. Now, as we see here, once you open a contract menu, your default view will be the Administration tab. Within the Administration tab, there are various modules. Those are these little boxes down here. and we will be reviewing most of them during this beginner's training session. Now, the administration module is where all of the administrative functions can be located, such as contract setup for designated contract actions, or setting the prime contractor and the contract's administrator, or entering the contract description and the contract number, in addition to like other admin items, such as like adjusting the settings for weather days, the submittal register, contract schedule type, and so on. So it's important to note that we recommend the program administrators, otherwise known as PAs, they link RMS contracts to the Program Management Information System version 2, or we're just going to call it P2 for short. They link them to the P2 numbers and set up the contract obligations amount for each funding account under the Contract Funding tab, and then set up the award contract amount under the Project Funding tab. Once that's done, then set up the primary funding type within the contract description module. Also, you can assign the project delivery team members, otherwise known as PDTs, and create the responses to RFIs, or request for information, and create the contract file folder, which contains all of the official documents that are stored and uploaded to the paperless contact files, or otherwise known as PCF. And last but not least, you should update the contract status in the contract status module that is located within the administration tab throughout the construction phase, all the way up until the final payment. And now, heading on into the description module, this should be the first item that a government representative would be concerned with in any new contract, for it is here that you'll be entering the important data to describe the contract, as well as listing the contract number and delivery order number. That's if you have it. Contract order number, delivery order number, if you have it. Like this one over here, not applicable. So it is essential that these two bits of information are correct in order to successfully complete a Corps of Engineers Financial Management System, or CFMS for short, download, which we will talk about some more later on. Now, if the contract number and delivery order number are not matching what is in CFMS, you will not be able to download CFMS, period. The rest of these items will require some data entry that is entirely dependent upon whatever your office or district policy requires you to put in there. Now, moving on into the contract status module, we see here that you can update your contract, such as the status photo for when the contract progresses along. And please note that the project engineers, or otherwise, the PEs, should be keeping this phase status tab issues right here updated, as well as the contract photo updated at least monthly, until the final payment is completed. Beginning with the contract status photo tab. Once you've selected that, you have these three options right over here. And noted in this slide are the definitions of what each button does. Pretty simplistic. When you open up the contract monthly progress tab, you will see some updated information that is populated primarily from the progress payment module, which is located in the finance tab. However, you can manually update it in here as well. But you should note that any changes made to this screen will affect the graph for the contract status sheet report. Although you may not see any immediate changes to any of the other modules that this is linked to within RMS, other modules can usually take up 24 to 72 hours to reflect the information that was manually updated here. Therefore, once again, please reference your office and district policy as whether or not you are going to use this section to do manual updates. Just be aware that it's here provided for your use. When you go into the phase status issues tab, you can view the cost time growth for the contract, as well as any entered issues that may have been published to within this module by the project manager or the PM. It is highly suggested to go ahead and set this up as an action item. One of those things that we previously went over, we want to set it as an action item with the intent to complete this task monthly. With that being said, ensure that you go ahead and update the date after updating all the information in this tab on this section. Otherwise, the action item will not go away. It'll just stay there. Then you'll be calling us. Moving along, we're now looking at the contract personnel module, where we can assign user roles to the staff members associated to the contract. This is accomplished by using the add, edit, or delete buttons in basically the same manner as mentioned before. It is important to point out that you will see two versions of these buttons throughout RMS. One being the ones with words, which we have previously seen, and like we have here, just the icons. Now, they may be kind of hard to make out what symbols they are, so just remember that the icon on the left is add, the icon in the middle is edit, and the icon on the right is delete. These icons will not change their order. Now, if the person you're looking for to add to this module does not show up in the search box, then please contact the RMS Support Center so that we can assist you in finding them or advise you as to why they are not currently listed. Now, in this next selection here, we see there are some blue boxes. Within RMS, this will allude to that there is a lookup field for that selection for you to go ahead and select from. And as always, the back button will commit any of those changes to the database, save it. Here is an example you will encounter when editing a PDT member. Once the user has been selected, they can be edited by choosing on the Edit button located in the middle, and then select the applicable information that goes to the lookup field that they want to update. And when you're done, just click on the back. Simple enough. And when you want to remove a PDT member, say somebody has left the contract, just select the user and then click on the far right button at the top of the trio on the top left of the data grid. From there, you will be prompted about the delete action, just in case you change your mind. So please verify this information is correct and that you want to delete it, because once it's deleted, it's gone. Now, contract documents. If the contract you're in has been around for a while, then you'll have the option to view documents from the legacy 2.38 version of RMS. However, if you don't know what 2.38 is, then it most likely doesn't apply to you. So keep on trucking. Okay, so the contract file. Now, this is a module. This module right here, it's just a wonderful thing to know about. The contract file module, it's found within the administration tab. It is the place where all documents, whether they're generated or even uploaded, can be found. If you're ever in search for a document or a report, the contract file module is the place to be. So please feel free to contact the RMS Support Center if you have any questions about contract documents. But please note that RMS is not PCF. PCF is a separate entity that has been mandated for use regarding all Army electronic documentation and repository needs. When you open up the contract file, it will always start with the default grouping of folder and subfolder. You can change this by following the instructions we went over earlier about grouping and filtering, but really the search button is your friend, especially in here, because it is a lot of information. It's every document within that contract. Now be aware that if you delete a document from here, it will be deleted from every associated place within RMS. If it has been sent to PCF, or if it is in a status of ready to send to PCF, the document should not be edited or deleted. If you open this section and it is completely blank and your contract is new, then don't worry. It's just because nothing's been sent to PCF as of yet. Now, not all documents need to be put in through a module or specific tab in order to end up in a contract file. Sometimes there will be occasions where the document package has already been sent to PCF, but you're like, oh, dang, I need to add an additional piece of audit evidence. Hence, we have the ability to manually add a document to the contract file module. Now, once the document in question has been uploaded to the contract file module, either by generating it or selecting it, the specific document, then you can complete whatever actions you need to with the item, such as editing the title, putting a new date on it, putting the description, or even signing the document if it needs to be signed. And then you can send it to PCF from this module instead of the document package that's already in a read-only status. Because it's read-only, you can't do anything to it. However, if you're manually uploading it through the contract file module, you will just need to ensure that you know where the document is supposed to be associated so that you can edit the title appropriately. Remember when we go back to those document titles about the pre-text and the post-text? We want to make sure that the pre-text is edited correctly so that it will be stored and saved within the appropriate file location on the database for RMS to access. Once the document has been signed, though, you can then complete it by clicking on the button up here at the top, just like completing the document package in any of the modules. And then you can send it to PCF by clicking on that button right there. And so it can just get all back there with all of its kin in that digital filing cabinet in the cloud somewhere abouts. Now, when documents have been properly uploaded to the contract file module via the applicable document packages, you have your options selected correctly and if you have your options selected correctly within the contract setup module, the document will be automatically sent to PCF. Yet now, as you see here, this slide is just a continuation of the explanation of the buttons and what they do and the overall reason why we have the ability to manually add and edit documents within a contract file. Contract setup, just what we were talking about previously. So, yet now we have a rudimentary understanding of the contract file module. Let's dive into the contract setup module. Now, within this module, there are 5 tabs that affect the contract in various ways. The first tab is in the contract setup module is the administration and funding tab. This is where we can configure what information will be collected, such as if the contract is using CFOMS. And if you're using CFOMS, please ensure you're on the correct database for CFOMS, like within your district, or if the contract is linked to P2, and whether or not to track the contractor's insurance or not. If the contract is required to track labor interviews, or if the contract is required to an ENG DD 1354. An important note here on the screen is this one right here. If this checkbox is clicked, then the government rep can enter data that the contractor should be completing by themselves. Since the contractor should be entering this data, their own data, you need to check with your district policy whether or not to be using this checkbox. If you are authorized to enter contractor data, you'll be prompted for your PIN or your signature whenever you check this box. So by checking that box, we will basically keep a log. RMS will keep a log of who's that person that checked that box. RMS will also track payrolls if the contractor is using the software to create and track their payrolls. Let's see here. RMS but that has to be determined in the contract literature, the actual paper contract itself. If it isn't, then we don't need to get on there and click the box to track the payrolls right here. And this option is what allows you to send the documents to PCF automatically, what we were previously discussing about by clicking on this little box. All right, as we see here in the Payment Modifications tab, RMS shows us information that is straight hand delivered from CFUMS. That is, if your contract is linked to CFUMS. Another point of note is that this information up here at the top is controlled by CFUMS when your contract is linked to CFUMS, and therefore only editable within CFUMS. Down here is all the information you'll enter based off the actual contract. Within the lookup fields, you can select those specific individuals or the offices, just as we talked about before. If the actual contract stipulates that the contractor is allowed to ask for additional earnings that are not included in the Activities tab, that's where they click here. Allowed additional earnings. To include all activities on prompt payment document. So you can include every single activity that has already been paid on the prompt payment document by clicking this checkbox, or you can just uncheck it to have just the activities for that prompt payment. So as you can tell from this screen so far, that there is a bunch of options here listed that you will need some sort of input or guidance from your office and district policies as to whether or not to enable. Within that mess behind us, we move on into quality assurance. Simple, good old quality assurance tab. First thing you want to do when you get to this tab is select what type of QA report, whether it's military or civil, in addition to listing who the PE is, who is the on-site contractor officer's representative, otherwise known as COR, because some of us have a hard time saying representatives. How many quality assurances shifts there are, or QA shifts. Who is the chief QA rep, if there's any alternate QA reps, as well as the quality assurance units that will be used for the contract. Now, right down here, we have the contracted expected work week, and that will be determined from the actual contract and inputted in here, as well as the actual work week. These are important because of the various scheduling items that RMS will auto-populate. But let's not forget to input the contractor's expected weather days. This is just per the terms of the contract. Now, it's not to say that these are absolute. It's just a prediction that of agreed numbers on days of each month that might cause a weather delay so that RMS can accurately calculate certain modules. The next tab is in the contract setup module is the Submittals and Schedule tab. You'll see here where we add the Submittals registry by selecting which version of the registry to use. Clicking on the little add button there. Not to worry, the types of submittal registries will be discussed later on when we get into the submittal sections of the presentation, so because there's varying types. Nevertheless, by clicking on this checkbox right here, RMS will calculate the submittal dates based off the activity. But if you want to manually enter due dates for each submittal items, don't click the checkbox. We also see a review period right here for each of the activity items. Then we have the default number of copies for each type of report, the default government reviewer, and the address for the transmittals of the 4025 packages. Now, finally, for submittals and schedules, here we can select whether the contractor is using a network analysis system, otherwise known as NAS, which we get the standard data exchange format, more commonly known as SDEF. It may be also known as a manual schedule, so that you have the selection to import the data from the data from the contractor's NAS. You will see this checkbox right here, where you can require the contractor to use the actual start and finish dates from the QC reports on their NAS. Moving on from the contract setup module, we will venture into the mysterious world of the P2 projects module. Now, this module is where you will add the P2 projects. You'll be able to review the information that is coming from P2 in these tabs. Boop, boop, and boop. Yet, if it's not correct in these tabs, this is something that will need to be updated in P2 and not RMS. The task status, milestone events, and cost time growth data will import over from P2 to RMS prior to the construction award, if the contract is set up with those checkboxes to use P2 data prior to award by selecting appropriate check, in the setup module. Once the construction has been awarded, then RMS will begin to report back to P2 with any information that is updated in RMS until the project physical completion date has been reached. It's pretty convoluted, right? So, well, the reason for this is because RMS is the program of record that compiles all of the information between the various activities, databases, programs, and actions for the contractor and government in order to have a common, unbiased view when executing a government contract, sort of like a referee. It has no opinions. It takes no sides. RMS just processes the data and records the transactions and reports what information it has gathered. Moving on, when you open each of the tabs, you will see a display similar to the ones provided here. And that is all I'd like to say about that. So now we can get into the correspondence module, and it is exactly as it sounds. This module is where the official correspondence happens for any given contract. And easily enough, RMS will assist you in creating the memos or letters in addition to classifying them based on your letter type selection. For example, H for home, S for site office, or C for government letters going to the contractor. Now, when you're in the correspondence module, once again, you'll see the sorting tiles up here to help us determine if a letter is in a draft status or a sent status or received status. and determine what point in that status it is within its individual steps, whether it's completed, not completed, approved, and so forth. Whatever you select from these sort tiles will once again be displayed here at the top of the data grid. And it is important to note that the contractor will not see this in-house memos. This is for official correspondence, the given you selected the correct option. This is inter-office communications about that contract. And yes, the contractor doesn't have access to this information. That's why it's called in-house memos. All right, so starting off, when you want to send a letter to the contractor, you'll simply click on the Add button and then select the option that you wish to create and eventually send. In this example, we have Letter to Contractor, which will open the pop-up prompting you for the letter number. Now, this is automatically incremented, so don't worry about that. Remember that the prefix C is predetermined and cannot be changed when you're sending a letter to the contractor. Once you have selected OK from the previous pop-up, you will now have this view presented. Here are the options about the letter, or rather the metadata. For all of you nerds out there, we like metadata. You can add a document package to this letter. And if it's answering another letter, you can select this button here, which will push all of that information down into here. Or if there's already other letters out there that you have sent or have been completed by someone else that answer this correspondence, then you can click the applicable buttons here to say, hey, these letters answered the correspondence. And just like anything else in a contract, when we have a document package, that's where we add all the applicable audit evidence. So whether or not that letter needs any kind of audit evidence. The important part about document packages in a correspondence is when you have a document package, the next step is to complete the said document package before clicking whether or not to send it off or not. So as we have noticed right here, it says not complete. In order to complete that package and change the status to the next one, which we want is as accepted, once everything is in there and has been signed and documented as much as you need it to be, you must click on the button that says complete package. You'll get a notice down here that says not complete, and it'll change it into complete. And then they'll prompt you back here where it says accepted when you're back to the screen. After you finish all that wonderful process with the document package, and you have ensured that the document package has a status of accepted, then your next step will be to select the sent status. So that's the little box up here in the top right. We're going to select the sent status box and choose the appropriate selection for such, as in this example, we're going to choose letter sent. Now be advised, you will be prompted that you're changing the status to sent and that this action cannot be undone once you have set it. But if you're sure, then you're sure. So go ahead and click yes, and the button will change, and everything in there, in that correspondence, will now just be read-only to you. And it'll get sent off to the contractor. As you can see here, when you click back, it will bring you back to the main screen here, and you can see that in the draft has now become sent, and sent is waiting for an answer. Now, when you are receiving a letter from the contractor, you will need to open it and then follow any of the procedures that you have outlined in your office or district policies to ensure that you have the correct options selected and the correct fields populated in the letter, such as all this stuff up here. Once you're done, you can open up into the module into the document package if it is accepted. And if you need to generate a letter, you can generate a letter from the document package simply by clicking on that top link that we discussed earlier about generate letters. This right here, you see, is a more detailed presentation of what we were talking about when you generate a letter. When you click on that button, you're going to get this selection box to choose what type of letter you want to create. But if you don't find the item that you're looking for within any of the expanded menus, you're going to need to talk to your district admin to get it uploaded, because all these letter templates are stored within your district library located at the contract selection screen. All right. Another module within the administration tab is the request for information module, which can be useful for any of the items listed here. Information requested, date requested, contractor's recommendation, any of that information. Please review this slide later at your leisure. Now, once you have the RFI selected and you open it up, your default view is going to be the Contractor RFI tab. Here you can go into their document package and view whatever they may have provided for this RFI. If the document package is not completed, you're not going to be able to review it. And it's going to say on the document package folder, not complete. At that point, you're going to need to contact them, whether it be email, phone, or carrier pigeon, and say, hey, can you please get into there and click the button? Please press the button. Submit for review. Press the button. When sending the RFI back for corrections, all you have to do is simply just click on the Return to Contractor for corrections right up here at the top. This way, the document package and everything within there will be sent back to the contractor. Now, the RFI itself, unlike before how we were talking about how the document package can be completely deleted, the document package here can be deleted, but the RFI will remain. The log that an RFI was created will remain. The contractor is not able to delete that they did an RFI. They can delete everything in there, but the RFI form will remain when they're working on it. So really, again, another thing to do about whether you're going to send a document package back to a contractor or not should be outlined in your office or district policies. Now, if the document package is acceptable, all the government rep will need to do is click on the Accept Package button. Once they click on the Accept Package, they've looked at the statuses, they've looked at the signatures, and it's acceptable. You click on the Accept Package button, then you can begin to review the information that's in the document package. And you can go over to your Government Response tab of the RFI. Now, an RFI is a request for information. We all know that. And typically, these come from the contractor. Correspondence is for sending serial letters that relate to contractual matters. But the RFI is not inclusive to the contractor. A government rep can create an RFI for the contractor to respond with necessary contractual information. Either way, when the RFI is leaving the government's possession, it will need to have the answer completed checkbox checked and the COR/ACO approved checkbox checked if the RFI is done and ready to be sent back. Now, this is to not only ensure good quality control of our information, but the main operation is that the contractor will not be able to review the government's response until these checkboxes have been checked. Now, if the government rep does not have COR or ACO permissions for that contract, they will not have the ability to check those checkboxes. They just won't appear. However, once both of those have been checked by the appropriate individuals, Then the RFI will be automatically shot off to the contractor, and it is important to note that copies will automatically go to the contract file. Like I said, the contract file captures everything, generated documents, any kind of files. It's a repository for everything. Now, there's a caveat to this whole RFI sending stuff from the government back to the contractor process. If you want to add items to the government document package, that's great. But if you want the contractor to be able to view those items that you have in the government document package, you will need to add them to the contractor document package. Otherwise, all the information in the government document package, that's only accessible by government representatives. They don't have the clearance to get into there. All right, moving on, we now have the contractor user entries module. This module is for the word templates where, let's say for instance, you have a certain person's name that is always going to be entered on a given contract or contracts in a given document. And if so, this is where you would select that field to enter that data. Other functions here can be found in our YouTube tutorials and are reviewed in our advanced training sessions. Moving on into the Prime Contractor module. Now, once opened, you'll have this Prime Contractor tab displayed right here. This is where you would select the Prime Contractor's name and corresponding information. This information is selectable from a selection box right up here in the top, those blue boxes like we talked about before. Once you select that box, it will list out all available prime contractors within that district. You go ahead and click on it, and it will start to auto-populate the fields that it's supposed to be. Then you might be able to edit some of those fields. It just depends on it's available. But if you find that any of this information in the prime contractor, once you select it from the select box, if any of it needs to be updated, it'll have to be done in the prime contractors list that is housed within the district office tab from the contract selection screen, which again is just another good reason among the many to attend our advanced training session. Now, it's important to note that this module is available in contractor mode and government mode. But this top section up here it absolutely must be entered by a government representative. Anything else in here can be entered or amended by the contractor. Once the contract has been awarded, the prime contractor DUNS code right up here can then be populated. Now, the payee office information, that's data that comes from CFOs. And if this information is incorrect, it has to be edited in CFOMS and then repopulated to this area through a CFOMS download. You will be unable to edit the payee office within the RMS application. If the CFOMS downloads does not populate this information, you need to double check that contract number and delivery order number, because most likely they're not correct, and those are found once again in the contract description. If everything's straight there, if those are what is the exact numbers in CFOMS, and you're still not getting the accurate information, then please give the RMS Support Center a quick call, and we will get to the root of the cause. Now, every contractor and subcontractor within a contract has a responsibility code. And it has been determined from on high that the prime contractor will always be PRIM. Prim. Prima donna, I don't know. Prim. Some contractors can be assigned by whatever is dictated in your office and district policy. A point of note is that the North American Industry Classification System, or NAICS code, is to be entered by the government. There is also an option here to effectively lock out all the contractors out of a contract just by clicking on that button there. Then no contractor can get into the contract no matter what their permission level. Now, when you open up a contract and you've listed that prime contractor, the very first and essential action that every contract should have completed once it has been created and awarded and all that other stuff, it's good to go, it's ready to start working in, is the government representative needs to assign a contract administrator. So once again, you'll go into the prime contractor module, you'll select the contractor staff instead of the prime contractor staff tab. And once you have someone listed there as a contract admin, that individual can then log into that contract and create profiles for all the other contract users. It's highly recommended that a contractor assigns the specific roles and not just have everyone in as an admin. For instance, you don't want the submittals clerk to unintentionally change items in the QC section, just as you don't want the QC representative to complete progress payments. This is why user roles are important. Moving on into the subcontractors module. Now, this module is found within the administration tab as well. And this is where the contract admin can add subcontractors to the contract so that they can be specifically assigned to the various activities. Again, whether or not the contract will employ subcontractors is dependent upon the contract itself and the office and district policies. So, once we open the subcontractors module by clicking on the button, you will see the data grid with our all too familiar add, edit, and delete features. Now, if you want to delete a subcontractor, it sure is possible. But if the subcontractor is tied to anything within RMS, i.e. an activity, an AHA, a payment, a labor interview, anything, then RMS will not allow them to be deleted. Also, this is where you would go in and set the responsibility codes for the subcontractor. Now, if the contractor does not have the subcontractor set as the same responsibility code in this module as they have it in their NAS, then there will be duplicates. And those duplicates cannot be deleted if labor hours, payroll sent to government, insurance, or other features are linked to those subcontractors and they have been sent to PCF. So it is important to ensure that your contractors understand that the responsibility codes need to match the responsibility codes in their NAS software. Once you have opened up a subcontractor profile to edit, you will see the screen presented here. The fields here in this section are the responsibility code of the contractor. To enter and update any relevant information. And now we have seen this often, and just want you to be aware of that the payroll's ending day of week right here. Very important. If the payroll's date is changed mid-contract, then a duplicate payroll could be generated automatically. Therefore, once you start a contract and you have a subcontractor or something, it's best to just get in there and set it and forget it. Now, with the Contractor Insurance module is just another module under the Administration tab that is set there for contractors to be able to track insurance requirements set out in the contract for the prime contractor and subcontractors. When you open the Contract Insurance module, you'll see the sort tiles once again and the data grid for the entries according to the responsibility codes. Then enter their insurance information and provide the necessary documentation. So when you're adding or editing a previous entry, you will have this screen to enter all the pertinent dates as well as upload any documents such as the standard form or SF 1413. And for those of you that are not familiar with what a 1413 looks like, this is what we have an example of. And of course, the contractor will have to click on the Submit for Review button for the government rep to be able to access and verify that information within the Contractor Insurance module. Moving on from that, as previously reviewed in the contract setup, is the Contractor Payrolls. Once the contract has been awarded, the government rep can turn on payrolls by clicking the Track Contractor Payrolls checkbox, and then whether to set the payrolls up by milestone from the selection on the items convenient in this drop-down box, and then how to end them, whether you use plus or minus in this box here to determine the actual timeline given off of these specific milestones. So once the date has been entered into the selected milestone, the payrolls will end accordingly to the settings you have chosen here within the contract setup. So if you, with those options previously selected, you can see the various payrolls for each responsibility code once you open up the Contractor Payrolls module. They will be all located within our handy-dandy data grid using our handy-dandy sort boxes located here at the top of the screen. They can be further grouped and filtered using the options that we've been previously discussed in the basic navigation section. And it is important to know that if a payroll has not started to generate here, then you need to contract the contract administrator to log into the contract via the contractor mode and enter this module, Contractor Payrolls. From there, they can select the button up here in the top right of the screen to enter the contractor's on-site date for the applicable responsibility codes. When reviewing the Contractor Payrolls, you will be able to edit any of the following items in the data grid by double-clicking or selecting the item and then selecting the Edit button. And if this is your assigned task, then what you should be most interested in is to open the payroll that has been submitted for review and either approve or reject by selecting one of these checkboxes. Now, if you accept the payroll, please ensure that you go into the document package if any have been submitted and you accept those document packages as well. Also, you may have noticed that down here at the bottom of this screen are the revision history. Now, any revisions that have been done to this payroll will be tracked down here in the bottom under the revision history. Now, once you're done with everything and you want to commit this screen and this data to the database, just click on the back button and it'll save the record and commit it to the database and get everything done and out of your way. And the last module we will review from the Administration tab is the Labor Interviews module. Now, this module is entirely dependent upon the contract items as well as the office and district policy. Each row here in the data grid will indicate an interview. In order to open up and look at the support documentation that supports that interview, you just need to double click on it or select it and click on the Edit button. An additional note is that if you log in by using a username or password and you don't have the correct permissions set up within your RMS staff profile, you will not be able to access this area. This means that you will need to work with your district administrator to ensure that you have your PII certification completed and updated to your RMS staff profile. It shouldn't affect most of you, but those that log in with a username and password. But now that we have verified that you have access and you are adding an interview to this module, you will see this screen presented here. Again, please, if you don't have access and you think you should have access, talk to the district administrator first, and then call and get a hold of us. We can usually solve whatever problem you're going through, but we need to make sure the district administrator have given you those correct rights. Once you have the lookup fields here for the specific employees or subcontractor, you can look up an employee, you can enter their employee name, you can look up the job classification for that employee, and as you see here, there's update various information that should be outlined in your district or office policies. And last but not least, the payroll clerk has an important part in labor interviews. They need to complete their part of this by comparing their data with the information entered here and annotate whether or not the labor interview is resolved or not. Whew. So, with that overload of information, what are your questions? Make sure that you feel free to post to the Q&A chat or voice them here now. If there are no questions, or if we are reaching a 15-minute time limit on questions, because this is a big area, then we'll have to just continue on with the presentation and try to field them at the end of our training. Anything at all. All righty then. So we're going to move on into submittals. Now, we just have a couple of sections left to go through this training. And once again, if you're not able to stick with us, we will be posting this training to our YouTube site in about 5 business days for your convenience after we finish this presentation. Now, clicking on the Submittal tab will present you with the options of the 4 modules chosen here. The first 2 modules, the Specification Sections and the Submittal Register, need to be set up prior to being able to work within the Transmittal Log module. Once the first 2 modules have been set up, you will then be able to focus your attention on the module where all the magic happens. So with that being said, we are starting our review with the Specification section. In here, you will see that you have 3 versions of the Specification Sections to choose from: the 1995 version, the 2004 version, and the 2014 version. Now, these versions are housed and kept within the district library. So when you're creating your submittal specifications for a contract, you will have to click on the Add button, and then you'll be presented with which of the options you want to populate your specification sections, whether you want to do it manually from a different versions or import from another contract. Now, personally, I would suggest that you would import in this section because it allows the automation of RMS to do its job. However, just please ensure that you're following any guidance outlined in your district policy when working in this module. Moving on into the Submittal Register, up in the top right, we have our viewing tiles. Now, these give us a count of all the items based upon their different statuses of the transmittals within this module. And here we have a zoomed in slice to show the use and filtering option that are presented in any of the column headers, just like we covered earlier in basic navigation. But the most important of any submittal item is over here on the right column, and that is the status. Down here in the bottom screen, unfortunately, it's not seen on this screen. So down at the bottom of this screen, when you're in the submittal register, you will see the history of whatever that submittal has been selected from the data grid. Now, in order to edit a submittal item, all you need to do is just double click on the item or select it and then choose the edit button up in the top left of the data grid. Typically, once you import the items into the Specification Sections module, most of these fields will be auto-populated with information previously listed. However, if you're in this area right now where you've opened it up and edited, you can see most of the imported information and you can edit some of the blue boxes. This is where any relevant or official information that relates to this submittal item is maintained. It is important to note that all fields in this view can and should be edited by the contractor, except the primary government reviewer, which can only be set by the government. Another important entry to note is that the start date may not be an editable field. And what drives this is the checkbox that you may or may not have selected in the contract setup module. Concerning that Submittal Schedules tab and whether or not the dates are to be computed upon activity schedules. Now, if your district policy has you select this option within the contract setup, it actually helps you when it comes to this section because you don't have to worry if the start date was ever set correctly because it has already been calculated. So now we see in this slide what is presented when we are in a transmittal log module. The first view of the data grid will be the transmittals in review. But what we see displayed to us in this slide is different from the initial view because the sort tile of pending government receipt was selected. Now, if the transmittal is in a pending government receipt, the status then no one will be able to view the transmittal, basically. You have to click on the date here and enter a date in order to move it to the transmittal in review. Once it's gone from pending government receipt sort view and you've entered that date and it's moved over to the transmittal in review sort view, then you can begin the process of reviewing the transmittal along with any of the associated document packages. Now, once you have the transmittal open, as we see here, you'll be able to open any document packages by simply double-clicking on it. In here, you can check all of the items that are housed there. And as you see in the screen here, there is a view of when you're reviewing a document package. It looks a lot like earlier views of editing and editing document package, but the key item to note is the accept package and the return for correction package button. Now, RMS will automatically identify what and how many of each type of files are contained within this package up here in the top. It'll notify you if any of them change. And once you've completed your review of these items, you can use those buttons right over here, the accept or return for corrections, to do just that. You can either accept that document package or return the package back for corrections. Just please remember that if you're returning the document package, it is always a good idea to annotate what was wrong with this document package in this field. However, please ensure that you are following your guidelines set forth in your office or district policies. Also, when you're returning a document package, you can just click on here to return the document package, but if you're returning it, you might as well just return the whole transmittal. To return the transmittal, all you need to do is just click on this button. You don't need to apply a QA code or anything. Just go ahead and click on Return to Contractor for Corrections up here, and it will send it straight back to the contractor. Please keep in mind that you do not have to enter any date here, right? Whether you're returning or whether you're applying your QA code, you don't have to enter the date here at all. If you're completing the transmittal and you want to accept it, there's a checkbox in the middle of the screen. So you go ahead and you select your QA code of whatever it's going to be, whether you need to resubmit them or they have approved it. Once you have your QA code selected, you click on the checkbox and then click on the Apply QA Code selection. You'll be prompted for your signature, which will want you to enter your PIN. or your password if you have a username and password to sign in. However, if the contractor has failed to digitally sign the 4025 initially to send it to you, then you may have to download, manually sign, and then click on this manually attach and sign button, which will guide you through the process of selecting the file and then going through each of the steps on how to upload it into your document package. Now, on this, it's important to note that you can attach documents to a transmittal in multiple areas. You can either attach them up here to the item number as an attachment, or you can attach them into the document package. Either way is acceptable, but it all really depends on your office or district policy. For more details on submittals, just please review our YouTube tutorials. You can access them by going to the RMS homepage and then selecting the RMS help videos down here in the bottom right. Once you get to the RMS homepage, there is the search box, which will search all of YouTube. But if you want to look for anything within the RMS channel, just go ahead and click on this search box over here at the end underneath the core logo right here. You can type in any search item that you're looking for. All right. Anybody have any questions about submittals? All right. Seems like we're doing pretty good here, so let's just keep on moving on. Moving on into the fun stuff now, QA and QC. What you see here is a summary of the things that are going to be reviewed in the QA and QC tab. Now, please note that not every module is listed here, and since this is a beginner's training, we won't be going down the rabbit hole too much on each module in the QA/QC tab. This is more of an overview of the tabs, the certain modules within that tab, and the associated functions of those modules. Now, these are all the modules you'll have within the QA/QC tab when you select it. Please review this at your leisure. And now getting started with the QA Daily Reports module. Here you see a summary of what is typically entered into this module. So here's a view of the actual module itself. And as with most sections, you can see the groupings of the various QA reports here at the top in the sort tiles. A quick review of the provided data grid will show us that the report number, the QA report date for that individual report, any information about it, weather delays from the QA report, the QA report status, if it contains any signed documents, or even if it's been sent to PCF status for that individual report. Now, you may have noticed the ability that has been added to sign multiple daily reports. Just by selecting this button up here in the top left of the data grid, and then choose the reports you want to sign, and continue through the prompts to apply the digital signature to the report selected, with the given condition in mind that the reports are completed and the document packages have been accepted. If the document packages haven't been accepted, sure, you can go ahead and apply your signature and send a PCF, but you're going to need to go back there and accept those document packages. Now, this is a view of what you see when you open up a QA daily report. You have by using either the add or the edit button. Now, the QA daily report has 8 individual sections to it, as you can see annotated here along the left side of the screen. To segregate each item into a specific data entry, you want those different tiles there so that it doesn't get muddled within each other. In the middle area, right now you don't really see it because it has a view of the QA report up. you'll get a summary of everything that is going on in the report so far of what you have entered. Whenever you enter something in a module into one of the sections over here, it'll start to populate here when you come back to this screen. Down at the bottom of every QA report, there will be a place for you to add documents into a document packages. And those documents are what pertains to this individual QA report. The button up here in the top right will allow you to view a snapshot of the QA daily report with the currently populated information. So if you've only completed the first 3 sections, it won't, all the section 4 through 8 will be completely blank. But be advised, if you want to view any documents, if the report's completed and you want to see the document with any signatures on it, you're going to need to go into the document package and look at the daily report with the attested signature. Then you can view all of that. This button up here will not show the signature on the QA daily report, even if it has been signed. Now, the first step to creating a QA daily report is to select the weather section and enter the applicable information. What you see in this view will depend on what the contract has selected in the contract setup module for the type of QA reports. Remember that part where we were talking about whether your QA report's going to be military or civil? If it's military, it's pretty simple. If it's civil, they want a lot of information in there. When you back out of the section or, click the back save button, RMS will take you back to the QA summary screen. And as you can see, it populates our QA weather information up here. Moving on into the second section, the QA narratives, you will be allowed to add whatever narrative you need. However, if the narratives that you go in there, you click on add and manually add QA narratives or copy narratives from a previous report, if the narratives are not listed in this selection box, those narratives can be added by your district administrator to the district library. So please check with your district policy to determine what are the narratives that are mandatory for each QA report, and if you need to have some more selected or added to this selection box. Now, this is an example of the screen that opens up once you select the narrative from the previous box here. And once you get it open, you are able to edit it. You can create your own narrative and you'll get the same box. This is there to allow you to amend it any which way you want, complete it, or enter anything into the other fields, but that is all dictated as per your district or office policies. Clicking back and then clicking onto the Deficiencies tab, we'll move into our next item of the QA Daily Report. And this is where we can keep track of any revisions to the QA deficiencies. As I'm sure we all know, contractors will have updates to this section all the time. Here is where you can track them with the revision history of what happened to that QA deficiency. In this next item, we have a screen capture of what you should expect when you open up the QA test section from a QA daily report. Opening up that, and then opening up each of those items. When you click on up here, it opens up the item where you can add more document packages. Clicking on back, and then moving into the number 5 section, the QA final follow-ups. The screen looks like this. Now, please ensure that you're utilizing anything in here using your district or office policies. The QA final follow-ups are typically completed after a contractor has marked a definable feature of work or DFOW completed. So you may not be accessing it a lot. And then the next item, when we click back, go to the QA summary screen and then select item number 6, is another screenshot here of the QA daily report. This view is what appears when you click on the QC requirements section. As you will note, the QA will check either the concur or reissue box for the QC requirements. More specifically, the QC tests and installed properties, user schools, or any transferred property. If the QA concurs with the QC requirements. QA being government, QC being contractor. Now, the 7th section is the labor interviews. Once these are executed using the SF 1445, the labor interviews can be annotated here in this section for a given QA daily report on a specific date. And last section in the QA daily report is the mishap reporting section, which opens up to this when you click on that tab. Here you'll be able to record any mishaps that occurred during that date, if it's the responsibility of the PE or the QA to attach the individual, or actually, scratch that. It is the responsibility of the PE or the QA rep to attach the individual safety report in the documentation package located within this section and not the document package for the QA report. So you'll need, if you do have a mishap and you need to upload a document package for that mishap, you have to enter the QA daily report, select this section, mishap reporting, create the entry, and then enter in the document package there. Once all of your selections have been entered and reviewed for accuracy, you can click on the Report Completed button. That will be on the next slide. I'll show you. It'll be down there in the bottom left. This will automatically create the completed QA report, and it'll populate it to the document package. In order to sign that QA daily report, you must open up that document package, then select the document you want to sign. And additionally, you can add any supplementary documentation here, such as QA test results, photos, or any other audit evidence that you may have that were not specifically uploaded to their specific document packages within individual sections. It is important to note that the QA report is prepared during each on-site visit. Make sure that whether you're using a multi-sign or signing individually, that the QA reports are signed in order, first by the preparer and then the approver. And just to reiterate what was put out before, ensure that the document package has been accepted prior to any version of signing the QA report. This is that button I was indicating about, saying the report has been completed. Once you've clicked the report completed, then you will open up the document package and go in there and sign the package or sign the QA report. All right. Now, as a government representative, we can move on into the QC daily reports. Now, please note that this is the government's view of the QC daily reports, and it's easy to distinguish between the contractor and the government views because these tiles at the top are blue instead of gold. Now, once the contractor has completed a QC daily report, then the QA will be able to view the contractor's officially signed QC daily report in the document package folder and determine if it's acceptable or if it needs to be returned for corrections. But if they have not signed it, the government will not be able to go view that QA daily report. Another module we have in the QA/QC tab is the QA/QC summary module. Now, this module allows you to get in and get a kind of a bird's eye view of all the QA and QC's and their associated statuses that are going on within the contract. So by clicking on one of the squares that you find here, the information pertaining to that square will be displayed in the data grid below. Don't worry about the title changing. It will change according to whatever you select here, and that way you'll know what view you're looking at. Moving on into the weather delays module. Only the government side will be able to see this module, and inasmuch they will be able to review the report that is generated once the month has been completed, has elapsed. The way they do that is by selecting a month, one of the months given here, and the government representative can then see if there's any disagreements between the weather delays reported in the QA reports and the QC reports from the contractors, so that they can correct those weather delays accordingly, because that affects other aspects within the contracts, especially schedules. Once you selected a month, you get this calendar view. And from this calendar view, we can see an example of unresolved conflict will populate here, as well as a critical delay that somebody has annotated, either QA or QC has annotated that day was a critical delay. Again, if there's a conflict on the date, the government rep will be able to select the date by just clicking on the calendar, and then they will be prompted whether or not the conflicting reports has been resolved or not. When you're done with selecting everything and resolving all your dates within this month, you can just come down here into the bottom to complete this module by either leaving it as a review or review completed. Continuing on, we are now in the definable features of work module, where we get a chance to see the information that is typically populated automatically with the data from the SDEF file. You also have the opportunity to add items manually. You can add them right here. And in order to edit some of them to a certain extent and possibly delete them. Now, please note, if that a contractor can only delete a definable feature of work if it is not tied to an inspection checklist. That's why it's very limited on what can or cannot be done to this field. You can definitely add stuff, edit things, but deleting it's only if it hasn't been tied to an inspection checklist. In this next module, as you can see, there's a lot of information here on this slide for you to read at your own leisure about three-phase inspections. That's a big old beast. Although it is important to note that in order for a three-phase inspection to populate, the definable feature of work must be complete. Within the three-phase inspection module, you can double-click on any of the inspections, set the dates for the preparatory checks, initial checks, and follow-up checks. But what you are seeing here is just a tally of the numbers of inspections, given its specific type for each DFOW. Additionally, more information about features of work and inspections can be found on our YouTube channel through those tutorials by clicking on that little search box and typing in DFOW or three-phase inspection. The hazard analysis module. Now, within the hazard analysis module, you will have some of the views presented here, up here at the very top, such as you will see a listing of any hazard analysis as well as any legacy hazard analysis. Also, this screen will provide you the name of the AHA, the activity hazard analysis, the status, and the approver. Double-clicking on any of the AHAs will open it up for you to see the description, the feature of work, or FOW, that is attached to it, and the document package for that specific activity hazard analysis. To the next module, the QC requirements module, you will have the sort tiles that run along the top Then you have the add, edit, and delete buttons for the data grid, and selecting a QC requirement will show you the information that is currently available about that requirement down here in the bottom of your screen. When the contractors have completed the test and they are unable to change the status from their QC test or to pass or fail, most likely they're trying to do it here. They will need to go to the correct QC daily report for the day that that test was completed, that action occurred, and enter that information there in one of those sections. Then once they've entered it there, that information will be summarized here in this module for the pass or failed results. And the next module is the equipment checks module. This is for when the contractor brings any maintainable equipment to the site. That equipment information must first be entered in this module so that it can then be populated and tracked within the QC Daily Reports modules. Carrying on into our next module, we have the Exposure Hours module, which will give you a roll-up of the exposure report that is submitted at the beginning of each month by the contractor. Now, the contractor enters these hours in the QC Daily Reports throughout the entire month. At the end of the month, you'll be able to see a summary of the exposure hours from all of the QC reports for the preceding month. So if you want to look for June and it's not July yet, you won't be able to see June. But being that we're in August, we should be able to see July right now. Now, you as a government rep will enter this module to view the summaries and update the overall status by selecting either in review, hours not accepted, or return to contractor for corrections. If the options of like the hours not selected is selected, then the government can enter comments about it into this area and send it back to the contractor. Next, we have the QC test module. Now, or the QA test module, excuse me. Now, the QA tests are completed to verify the results of QC test results. So basically, it's a control activity to ensure quality measures are to standard. You will notice that there is no document package folder within this module. The QA test reports and any supporting documents should be added to the document package for each of the specified QA daily reports for the date that they actually occurred. Here we have the required verifications module. If you have a QC verifications that you want to set as required for the contractor, such as within the installed property or any QC test or transfer property or user schools, this is the place for you to do that and see the overall status here down in these grids. Each option in the data grid can be expanded. Once you expand them, you can see, or you then should be allowed to pull up the information and see what is reflected by selecting the individual sections. And finally, the last module we'll be talking about today within the QA/QC tab is the planned interviews. Now, this module allows us to indicate a scheduled planned interview for each contractor and subcontractor based upon their responsibility codes and what they are and if we're going to be doing them or not. Are there any questions on QA/QC tab? Now, I know there's a lot more modules within the QA/QC tab. Those are just other areas for other training events and advanced training sessions. But if you have any questions, please ask them about the QA/QC modules. All right. Seems like silence is compliance. So we're going to move on into progress payments. Now, this is just such a fun area here. In progress payments module, more specifically, we're going to talk about the contractor pay worksheets and what are the basic steps to add, edit, and evaluate a pay request. When you have a time, there are numerous additional YouTube videos on our channel that really go in depth about all these functions. So please check them out when you have a moment. To get to the progress payments, you will need to navigate to the Finances tab and then select the progress payment module. In order for users to be able to see progress payments module and other financials module, the contractor will need to have the actual NTP, notice to proceed date, entered. That's in our milestones and our schedule module. Again, advanced training. For the contractor to start or edit progress payments, all of the activities must be balanced with the CLINs or the contract line items, in addition to an updated SDEF imported if the contract is using imported schedules. However, most importantly, for the government to do any work here, the contractor will need to complete the actual invoice. It is important to note that while an invoice is still being processed, no changes to the pay activities or modifications should be made, as this will unbalance the contract, preventing complications and of the progress payment. It throws everything off. So please pay attention to any contract modifications you're completing prior to a progress payment. This is because we just don't want to. You don't want to deal with this headache. It is entirely avoidable. If you happen to be doing a mod while an invoice is being processed, because it does happen, you will need to wait till that invoice has been completed, and you enact your contract. Then you can enact your contract modification within RMS. Here we have a brief overview of the progress payments for you to read at your leisure. And here are some of the basics for a contractor pay request worksheet. Now, this contractor pay request worksheet can be found in the Contract Reports tab. Once you click on the Contract Reports tab, you can just go ahead, once again, to our little search box and type in worksheet or expand the finance report group, and it'll be located within there. With the worksheet open, you will get this document here with this lists all of the activities that are associated with this contract and any of the involved amounts. It will list any submittals, any features, and the QC requirements that have been linked to the activities. Now, you can have a meeting with your contractor to review this worksheet and determine how much they can ask by itemizing it on this invoice. Yet again, please follow the primary guidance of your district policy as to whether you use this worksheet or not and what steps to take prior to completing a progress payment. When you open the progress payment module, you'll see a data grid with all the past and current progress payments. You may have a contractor reach out to you stating that they cannot process a pay request because of an error that finances are not properly balanced. This is usually caused because the contractor didn't rebalance the activities after a modification was enacted, or they balanced the activities in anticipation of a modification being enacted on the contract. Progress payments should be a reflection of what is currently listed in the contract. If it's the first issue, then the contractor will need to update their scheduling software. That scheduling software can be pretty much anything. Primavera, Microsoft Project, anything. Workday. To include the changes with this new modification that has been applied to it. For those requirements, please refer to the contract documents. Now, if it's the second issue, depending on if the modification was approved in CFOMS, now that will depend on whether the contract needs to be removed or need to remove those changes or manually or through an old, you can do that manually or through an old SDEF import, or if the modification is completed by the government in RMS. So, like I said before, it is all a matter of what is the current state of your contract right now, and has those modifications been approved or not approved. If you come upon any of other errors within progress payments that you or your contractor are unable to correct, please just submit a help desk ticket as soon as possible, as soon as you know there's an issue, because we need to address these right away. Otherwise, there could be penalties. Interest could be accrued if the payment is not paid promptly. When you're ready to edit the progress payment, just double click on it or select it and click on the edit button in order to open it up. Now, if the contractor has completed the progress payment on their side, you'll get a warning stating that it has been completed, and you will be unable to open up the actual invoice. Like if you try to click on this one that says in process, you won't be able to open it. You'll get a warning. You'll get a prompt saying that you can't do it. But if you click on 5, you'll be able to open it up, and it'll tell you everything in there. But most likely 5's already been completed. The progress payments are locked down to be only one user at a time. This is to avoid any conflicts. Like how earlier you were able to have multiple users in a contract at a time. Well, when you're in, multiple users can be in this contract, but only one person can be inside the progress payment at a time. Because we don't want too many cooks stirring the soup. Otherwise, it'll just get salty. It is important that you look at the payee office down here. That information is populated from the contract description to verify that it is the correct information. That description is populated by the CFOMS download. So in order to have the CFOMS download bring any new information, the contract number and delivery order number must be set up in the contract setup. Sorry, not the contract description, contract setup module must match. And then if that matches what is in CFOM and you can do a CFOMS download, then you should be able to have the correct information there. But if it's not the correct information, then we're going to have to make sure that's updated in CFOMS itself. If this over here, you can edit the progress payment priority, payment terms, and return the invoice if you find that it needs corrections. But whatever you do within this area right here, please ensure that you are following the district policy. Some of the common errors that we see with progress payments a lot are the dates entered are not the correct dates. Basically, the bottom line up front is that RMS will not complete the ENG 93 if there are any logical errors in the date. It just does not compute for it. This is a view of what appears when pressing the payment priority button. Normally, this is not changed unless the contract is set up using something other than a pre-planned obligation for payment. And that has been selected within the contract setup screen. But this option is available if required. Here we have a view of the screen when you press the payment terms button. It is so you can check the payment terms to determine when the contractor will be paid. This information can only be changed inside of CFUMS and is updated here with a CFUMS download. On this tab right here, the requested activity earnings, you have the option to review what the contractor is requesting with this invoice. If you do not have the ability to, you will not have the ability to edit this tab, but you can do your necessary work in the allowed activity earnings tab. If you are not in agreement with what the contractor is requesting, you can make your changes here in the allowed activity earnings tab. However, I would recommend that you just return the invoice for corrections and then, have that discussion with the contractor about the amounts and what they're requesting so that you can avoid any alterations to the information on this tab. Yet again, it's another thing that should be outlined in your district policy, especially with this section, because there can be those times when a contractor requests certain amounts, but they won't amend it to the amounts that you, as the government rep, determine that they should be getting. So you have to go into this section and amend it here. A common issue that has been affecting invoices are when CFUMS sends RMS $0 invoices to balance the accounts in CFUMS. When CFUMS does this, you'll need to go into any of the progress payments that are affected, starting with the lowest number of the progress payments, navigate into this tab, and correct the earnings for this period that are not matching what is currently within CFUMS. You can see in the bottom left a red message with a dollar amount that is different from what the dollar amount in the total earnings for this period box. You'll need to adjust that allowed amounts, the dollar amounts column, to the previous amount for all activities until the total earnings in this period matches the dollar amount in the red message. As we can see, like right here. That would be down here if it was off. Okay, the subcontractor earnings. Now, the column header for the subcontractor earnings deducted by contractor. Right here. This is kind of a misnomer because when it comes to subcontractors, if the contractor is going to withhold any funds from them, they must first check in with the government representative. The reason is because it says that the funds are going to be deducted by the contractor when it's really the government. The contractor is not authorized to hold any funding. That's the government's job. So if the contractor is entering a deduction here that was not approved by you as the government rep, then this payment will need to be returned for corrections. However, if it was approved, then the deduction will be deducted from the total amount the contractor is requesting to be paid. Within this section, you can see the previous amounts paid by each CLIN, the total amounts to date, and the total allowed to date columns, which is the sum of all the previous amounts plus the requested for this period amount. Now, in a contract modification, if they just added a new CLIN to the contract and the contractor is wondering why this previous amount is 0 on their brand new invoice after a contract modification, well, that's because they haven't requested anything yet. So it can be kind of confusing. You just need to pay attention to whatever your column headers are. If you are allowed additional earnings outside the pay activities for a contract, then this is where those earnings will show. But check with your district policy about using that option within your contract, that little checkbox in the contract setup. A point of note is the calculation method down here at the bottom. The standard calculation, right now that's currently listed. Most contracts will use standard calculation, which works very well as long as the RMS, contract line items, the RMS CLINs are correctly tied to the CFM's obligation line items. We have a whole YouTube tutorial on how to identify RMS CLINs not correctly tied to a CFM's obligation and how to fix that issue. Instances that may require you to use a periodic calculation are if RMS is putting the amounts on the wrong obligations, because the RMS CLINs could possibly be tied incorrectly to its corresponding CFM's obligation line item in an RMS modification. So obligations do not just distribute correctly on the obligations tab, and you can't correct the obligation CLIN ties. Then a periodic calculation may be a viable option for you. But again, reference the district policies. When you click on that drop-down box where it said standard calculation before, it will open up this screen for you so you can get a better definition of what's the difference between a standard and a periodic calculation, so that you can decide which one works best for your contract. And the last step is to click for this section is to click the box total allowed earnings for this pay period entered. Now, once you've clicked this will allow you to go into the obligations tab. If you don't click this checkbox, you will not be able to enter anything into the obligation tab. Now, if you try to look at this tab prior to checking the box, the additional earnings, you'll be prompted to go back. So don't worry about it. RMS will just automatically tell you that, hey, you messed up. You need to go back and click a box. All right. It wants you to do that step before you can continue to move on. So it's trying to help you out here. In this tab here, you can verify all of the monies that are going to the correct obligation line items. You will also be allowed to make any deductions or retainages or refunds for that may be within this invoice in this section. Any error that may be present will list itself here in this box. And once you've completed everything in this section, you can check the ENG 93 completed checkbox. Now, please note that this is not the end of a progress payment. Some common errors that we see a lot when you get to this section is that it'll say payment assigned to incorrect obligation leads to overbilling, or not selected ENG 93 complete. If you get anything like that, submit a help desk ticket if needed. Don't wait, because again, waiting could possibly generate interest if the progress payment is not paid promptly. Now, once you've clicked that ENG 93 on the obligations tab, it'll take you over. You can get into the document packages. You must open the document packages in order to check any and all audit evidence to ensure the appropriate documentation has been added and it is correctly signed. Now, this can be done from the document packages tab, and you can see how they're both listed here. This top one is contractor. This bottom one is government. So you can view the contractor's document packages and you can accept it. And then you can go into the government's contractor document packages and review it. Now, the government document packages will contain the signed ENG 93. Once you have the package open, you can view the items by selecting on them and clicking on the document button, view document button below. Right here is pretty much like any document package. They're really simple and self-explanatory. Again, we have the completed package button down here for you to select once you have signed and viewed all of your documents. If everything has been viewed and it is acceptable, you can sign the documents by selecting Sign Selected Documents button to determine what must be signed, and that's just a document of record that you'll need to review your district policy. But then you can finish the steps by following the prompts, as we discussed numerous times before. Within the ENG 93, there are 2 signature locations. So when you get to that drop-down, check that selection box. Make sure that you are selecting the correct location. Otherwise, your signature will print on top of another signature, and really nobody wants to see that. Nobody can really understand that. Now note that the government document package has an extra file titled Payment Calculations, which summarizes how RMS calculates the obligation distributions for that given invoice. This file is generated every time the allowed activity earnings complete checkbox has been checked. This document can be used to help determine if RMS CLINs, the contract line items, were incorrectly tied to a CFM's obligation. So please, we have all this information lined out in a live YouTube tutorial of somebody going through a contract and showing exactly all how to correct the CLINs that have been linked in a modification for detail. So these links and that video can be found at the end of this presentation on our resources slide. Now, after you have verified that all the documents and signatures are present, the very last step here is to complete on the complete package button. This will send the documents in this package to PCF. Then we can go back to the previous screen where we can verify that the ENG 93 is complete and move on to our final step of the progress payment. As the government rep, you will need to review not only the government package and complete it, but ensure that you're going into the contractor package as mentioned before for the invoice and accept that package through those previous steps we just went over. Now that everything has been signed, document packages have been reviewed, ENG 93 button has been checked, we can get back to the Obligations tab and click on the Send Payment to CFMs button. If this button is not pushed, it will not be sent to CFMs. However, after pushing this button, you will receive a prompt to authenticate that you are the individual pressing the button. If you want to find out about any information as it pertains to CFMs payments being uploaded to CFMs, just select the Logs button up here, and you can see all that information of how and when RMS does its lines and transmits that data to CFMs. Please note that the individual sending the payment to CFMs must have a valid CFMs user ID for that CFMs district, and it must match their RMS ID. Otherwise, all that hard work will be in vain and you'll just get another error. Now, by clicking on the Reports button, it will bring up this submenu here that will allow you to preview any of the reports at any time throughout this whole process. The data populated in here will depend on how far you are within the process, just as in the QA and QC reports. Now, when you have an error with CFMs, you'll be able to determine this by looking at the invoice in question. And up here in the top right, there will be another option for you to select. When there are errors, it'll be labeled CFM errors. So you'll see logs, reports, CFM errors. If you don't see CFM errors, you're pretty good. You're tracking. Now, this is a preview of the prompt pay report, just for your reference. And here's a preview of the ENG 93, page number 1. What is displayed depends on when the report is viewed throughout the process. This is page 2 of the ENG 93. Again, what is displayed depends on where you are at in the report process. And page 3 of the ENG 93. Again, what's displayed is how far you are along. And the other item that you can select is once a check has been completed, you can click on there on that drop-down box, the little submenu, and it'll pull up. You can look at the completed payment information from CFMs. You can look at the actual check that has been scanned. Now, as I said before, our resources link here has a bunch of quick links that go straight to all the YouTube videos that we were discussing about and some of the other ones that we just alluded to within this training. If you have any questions, please check our resources link here, go to the YouTube channel, or just go ahead and give us a call here at the RMS Support Center. With that, it concludes my presentation. Please, what are your questions?
I want to thank everybody for coming out today and participating in the training. Note that tomorrow we do have an advanced training, so look for that if you want some more additional information, and also look for the recording of this up on the YouTube channel here in the future. Thanks for attending. Bye.
Okay, I did see a couple of questions that just came in. Is there a sign-in sheet for the presentation? Dallas, are you still here?
I am.
Is there a sign-in sheet for the presentation?
Might have to email or ask Carrie on that one specifically. I haven't been involved with the sign-in sheets. With the
I'm
PMO,
sorry,
so.
I didn't know if we were to sign in or not. I just jumped on.
There's no sign-in sheet, but we're in WebEx, and it does take account of everyone that signs in.
Wonderful. Thank you. Sorry to bother you.
No, no problem. Thank you for the question. All right, well, thank you.